was a policeman for 22
Wow.
years, and a lot of it I was a detective for many years and worked homicide and any number of special assignments with the federal government. So during one of the cases, one of the murders I worked was a child murder, and it was very horrendous. I carried a little damage, to my psyche from
Sure.
that, and so I started journaling and writing about it, and it ended up I fictionalized the murder case, kind of like as a
Yeah.
catharsis, and
Yes.
so I ended up writing a novel fictionalizing this child murder case, and it turned out to be, pretty nice. I must say, a pretty nice book. And I threw in some supernatural, just to make it fictionalized. I threw in some supernatural elements and things like that in it. That's out there. It's called The Tapping.
And hello, welcome. This is another episode of the Molten Truth. I am your host, Zoey Michaels. And tonight we get to meet someone new. This is someone that I literally met a few minutes ago. I only know just the barest essentials about Howard. And so we're going to learn about him together. Howard Levinson from the Midwest. I'm going to let him share if he wants to share anything further than that, because, we all like to have our privacy. But Howard is a musician and an author. So two things that are very close to my heart, because as you know, if you've watched these episodes, I also am an author and I also love music. I compose lyrics. I don't have the talent to actually compose the actual music part to support them, but definitely have the love of that. So welcome, Howard. We're looking forward to getting to know you here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Zoe. It's good to
Good
be
to
with you.
have you.
Good to meet
Same
you.
here. So you were telling me you're from the Midwest, like myself. I'm also from the Midwest. Now, where I grew up outside of Chicago, so for me, it was about Chicago Bears and
The
the
Bears.
White Sox, Italian beef sandwiches, because the food is as important as the activities, the sports, when you live someplace. So we know that you've got the creativity as far as the writing and the music. Do you have any other creative sides to you?
Well, I mean, noveling and songwriting are pretty time intensive as far as taking up a lot of my creative
Yeah.
spirit. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing for many, many years, either writing. I mean, I wrote a bunch of short stories and I've had a number of different careers and I've written some technical journal type articles in the various careers that I've had. But of late, of the last 15, 20 years, it's been noveling and songwriting.
And that of itself is a lot. I mean, some people are happy just to have one creative outlet. To have more than one is a true gift. And people who have
Or a curse, depending on where you sit.
that can be true as well. That is true. But it is nice to have those outlets all the same. And I consider people who are great cooks, or who obviously the painters and such, but I even think about people who cook, or things that I can't even imagine, people who sew. I could not sew to save my life, but some of them are quite artistic, so I consider them also in that same category. It's just about what we love to
Yeah.
do and how much time and effort we put into it. So you came to us under the music umbrella. What kind of music is it that you play?
Well, of late, I'd say the last probably dozen years, I've been leaning into
Okay.
country. Uh, Serendipitously, I ended up in Nashville, and I met some producers about a dozen years ago, and I started. I've been playing pretty much rock music for most of my youth and then adulthood. But about 10, 12 years ago, I ended up turning the page, going into the country genre. And that's where I've kind of stayed of late. Kind of country rock, but mostly, into the country vein. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah. It's funny how music, I don't know, seems to go in waves. I remember back in the 80s when it seemed like country music kind of merged with rock a little bit, and then it went off on its tangent, and then it came back again, like in the mid '90s, where the two kind of merged together again. Um, but it's interesting how they kind of meet and diverge at different intervals. It becomes popular again. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's just my
Yeah,
own observation.
country's pretty popular right now. Although the country of today is more pop than country. How as I view country more pop than it is country, but that's just how times change. Like you said, there's an ebb and flow to almost
So
everything.
true. That pendulum goes back and forth. I'll never forget how surprised I was one day. Was it probably a decade ago now? I can't believe it's been that long. But I remember sitting in my day job and thinking to myself, is that Hootie from Hootie and the Blowfish singing on a country music song? And of course it was. It was Darius Rucker singing,
Oh
playing
yeah,
his album.
wagon wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah, singing wagon wheel.
Well,
Everybody. Wagon wheel's a Bob Dylan song, and everybody thinks that's Darius Rucker's
yeah,
song, but
yeah.
he made it
He did.
famous.
Although for me, it was not that song that clued me in. It was a different song altogether that was on the radio. But it was just that unmistakable sound of his voice. It was just like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
is that who I think
He's
it
gone
is?
country. Yeah,
Exactly, like
yeah,
Alan
he
Jackson
has.
saying. But yes, I mean that was like my first like whoa moment. But it made sense. And then of course John Bon Jovi had tried to follow suit, and several others did. But it is interesting to watch how times change and that ebb and that flow. Um, I didn't have the opportunity to listen to any of your songs, but as with most of the artists I speak to, you're an indie artist, correct? Yeah.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, I have not all of my songs, but a bunch of them that are on all the streaming platforms, Spotify and whatever. Um, like I said, I've recorded a bunch in Nashville and some other studios, some things locally here, but a bunch of it in Nashville. And yeah, we're indie artists because it's a community of people who love to play music. And are we ever going to be on terrestrial radio where somebody's going to be playing our song every 90 minutes?
and would you want
Negative.
to be?
Probably not very well, monetarily, maybe. But, that's just, for the majority of people, it's just not going to happen. But there's so much good local music. And that's why I, you know, I grew up like you in a city. I grew up in St. Louis. And so, of course, we had the Cardinals and the Blues, sports teams. But um, we moved out to a farm a while back, and I live in a small community. I'm 30 minutes away from the grocery store and a Walmart, so I play a bunch of small towns. I'm playing coffee houses and bars and wineries and restaurants and things like that. A lot of it's solo, sometimes with a couple other guys, fellow musicians, but that's where that's the most enjoyable part of it because when you play small venues like that, you never know what's going to happen. Somebody might show up that you played there a month ago and they say, "Hey, man, I really like that song you played. Play such and such a song because I really related to it." And you're not going to get that in a bar at 1 in the morning in some
Well,
major
that's
city.
true.
Just not going to
That's
get it.
true. I mean, for the sake of argument, I mean, Missouri's a big state, but if you were playing in Missouri, I know that Sarah Evans, I mean, that's where she grew up, was in that state, so she still has family there. So theoretically, one day Sarah Evans could walk into some place that you were playing and might hear what you're doing and say, "Hey, I like that," and hey, here's this opportunity. Things happen.
Sheryl Crow's
Yeah,
from Missouri.
did not know that.
Sheryl Crow's from a small town in Missouri, yeah, but they all moved out to LA
Well,
or
yeah,
wherever.
it'll happen. But you just never know. It's like you said earlier, kind of sometimes it comes down to serendipity. But right place, right
Yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
for lightning to strike. But so when you think about influences in your life, because you said you've been playing music since a very young age. I think you said you've been playing music for about 50 years now. Did I hear that right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I remember when the Beatles started and the English invasion and all that. And I said, man, I got to get in on that, you know.
That had to have been an exciting time. Like that would have been a cool time to have been a young person. Um, Definitely before my time period. That would have been my parents' time period, I think, or maybe somewhere in between. But that would have been fun. But so when assuming the Beatles were probably a big influence for you, but who also have been your musical influences or inspirations for you?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, the whole Beatles, Beach Boys, Rolling Stones, that whole group of people that came up in the 60s and 70s. There for a while, I got off and I was playing in a really hard rock band, and we were kind of we were influenced by, and you may not know anything, like from the Detroit sound, like the MC5, Mitch Ryder, um, Iggy and the Stooges, Lou Reed, David Bowie, that genre of kind of like alternative hard rock stuff. I did stuff like that for probably 10, 15 years in some bands like that. And those were influences. And then as I got a little older and I got a little bit more deaf from standing in front of huge stacks of amplifiers, I really didn't want to do that
Don't blame
anymore.
you.
So, yeah, I went into more like the country rock genre, like Eagles, Poco, New Riders of the Purple Sage. Those are some bands maybe I do recall playing songs of. Um, and that morphed of late into more like the Tom Petty and Hank Williams, Hank Jr., Charlie Daniels, the Chris Christopherson type, storytelling, John Prine, storytelling type music. And that's what I've been writing now for the last decade or so, kind of like
I
storytelling
love
songs.
storytelling songs. I think there should be
That's what,
more of those. I miss a lot of that. I think
yeah, it's
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I grew up on that type of stuff. You mentioned Tom Petty, and I knew a lot of his popular music, of course, but there was this one album of his who had this song. I think it was called Two Gunslingers. Have you ever heard of that song of his?
I'm sure I have. I don't remember it. I've listened to almost every
Let's
one of his
say it
albums
was an
though.
interesting song about these two gunslingers who, just show down in, out west, and they get to a certain point, and they're like, and both of them look at each other. We don't want to fight anymore, and the rest of the song is about them, walking away from the fight and so on and so forth. But I just thought, what a cool notion for a song, and I could make a book from that. So it's on my to do list
Yeah,
of
he's
books I plan to write someday.
yeah, he's a great storyteller. Yeah, I mean, too bad he's died,
Yes,
but he's a great storyteller when he's alive.
absolutely. And I don't know if he did more than one movie part, but he was in a movie with Kevin Costner. I think it was called The Postman, and he did really well in that movie.
Yes, he was.
I was really impressed with
Yeah,
him.
yeah, he was. Too bad the movie didn't do so good. I don't think the movie made
Probably
any
not.
money,
But those are some of
but
my favorite
yeah,
movies. The ones that don't get a lot of acclaim are usually some of the best movies. You know?
I think what else he wrote about? Was it Waterworld another one of the Costner bombs? I think
Yeah. And
Waterworld
it
was
was
another one.
okay. It
Yeah,
wasn't one of my favorite
but
ones, but I thought Postman was actually a pretty good storyline. Really well done.
well, it's post apocalyptic,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Neither here nor there, just except that it had Tom Petty in it, which was kind of a cool feature. But
Mhm.
so now you mentioned that you've written 3 books.
Right,
Tell me
right,
about your
right,
books. So
right.
you mentioned multiple genres. So tell us a little bit about your
Yeah,
books.
three different. Three. I wrote the first book I wrote. I was researching
Okay.
Asperger's, and I thought, and I was in a medical field at the time, and I was researching that, and I thought, man, I could probably make a character and spin Asperger's and spectrum disorders in there, and I did, and it had to do with aliens and these kids with there was a young adult novel, these kids with Asperger's who could actually see and hear things on a different you know
Wavelength.
wavelength than other people. They were able to identify this stuff and they saved the world.
I like that.
That
That's
was
a
one.
cool
It was a
storyline.
fun book to write.
Yeah.
Um, and then see the next book I wrote. I didn't tell. I mean, I was a policeman for 22
Wow.
years, and a lot of it I was a detective for many years and worked homicide and any number of special assignments with the federal government. So during one of the cases, one of the murders I worked was a child murder, and it was very horrendous, and I carried a little damage, to my psyche from that, and so I started journaling and writing about it, and it ended up I fictionalized the murder case, kind of like as a
Yeah,
catharsis,
a healing
and
process.
so I ended up writing a novel fictionalizing this child murder case, and it turned out to be, pretty nice. I must say, a pretty nice book. Uh, and I threw in some supernatural, just to make it fictionalized. I threw in some supernatural elements and things like that in it. So that's out there. It's called The Tapping. Um, and then my third book is a government conspiracy invasion of privacy novel that has some musical overtones. Threw some music stuff in it, music industry stuff in there. But basically, and I wrote that about over 5 years ago. And so much of what in that book, it's called Unseen Forces. So much of what has happened over the past 5 years or so that I wrote that really wasn't happening as far as government intrusion and privacy issues has turned out to be happening. It's like either if it gets as bad as it gets in my book, which is fiction, we're in a heap of trouble.
Isn't it funny how sometimes life imitates fiction or fiction imitates life? I can never be
Sure.
sure which one, but sometimes a little bit of both maybe. But I always find that interesting how, or maybe it's just that we become more aware of it after we've seen the fiction, then we see it in the news, and maybe it was there all along and we just become more aware of it. But I always find that so interesting how that happens that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I hope this doesn't come true, but I'm much afraid that it probably already has.
Yeah.
So, especially with the advent of AI and all those things that are going on right now, it's very concerning or scary if you really want to put it right down to the right adjective. It's scary.
And I certainly see where you're coming
Well, it's all
from.
the happy talk we
Right? Yes, happy would be
have.
nice, wouldn't it? There's plenty of things to worry
Yeah.
about. But worry, doesn't change tomorrow, and it certainly doesn't extend our
No.
life any. Worry is only
True.
worthwhile if you can do something about it, if it's in your power to change things. So,
True
yeah.
that.
There's probably a song in there somewhere. I'll leave it to you. You're the
There's
professional.
probably been a dozen songs written on that. Yeah. Yeah. A dozen of them. Yeah.
So, what are your plans like? Do you have plans to put out any albums in the near future? Or are you currently in a songwriting mode? Or how is your life structured at this time?
Yeah. Well, I signed with an indie label called Big Records. They're out of Canada, Big Records World. And we've been doing a few things and putting some songs and videos out. And I've got about three or four songs that I'm in the process of either finishing writing or I finished. So I probably will sometime next year, hopefully the beginning of the year, get back in the studio and record these and then put out like an EP, 3 to 5 song EP, probably through Big Records World. You they have they're a they use Universal Virgin Records for distribution, so I'll probably be doing that maybe the first or second quarter of 2026. It just depends on if I get these songs that I'm working on where I'm ready to really go in the studio and finish them
Sure.
up, because sometimes, I've been working on one for a while now and I was just playing with it today and I just thought, well, what if I change key and change it to different chord structure? And so I was messing with that today and I had thought that song was almost done. And I thought, well, I kind of like this. I kind of like this new sound. So I'm not going to have to mess around with that for the next few weeks or so.
I'm sure it'll,
It's just all part
yeah,
of it.
absolutely. Sometimes it's worth tearing it back and when you find something that works better. I actually interviewed someone yesterday. He's not a songwriter, he's an author, but he was just telling me about how he had his book outline all set, but then he had told his publisher, he was all set, but then he thought of even a huge improvement to the book, and he disappointed his publisher because he said, "Look, I know how to make this book 10 times better, but I have to start from scratch." And so, but that's what happens.
So you're a writer, you're an
Yes.
author.
Yeah, I've written.
So do you have the process? Do you have a process where you outline, basically the chronology of your book before you start writing? Like you put a bunch of ideas down and you kind of know what path you're going to
That's
take?
usually the way I take. I usually know the full storyline that I want to tell. Maybe not all the ins and outs details, but I know that, like, I know how it's going to end. Usually, I know from beginning to end where I want the story to go. Um, Kind of like when you map a road trip.
Okay.
You're going to California. Roughly the route you're going to take, but you don't know about the stops along the way. That's how I write. Um, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I don't do
No,
that at all.
we all have our different
No,
processes.
I know. I have an idea of what the story is, but then along the way, when I'm writing, I let my characters take me, and my characters will tell me where they want to go. And then they may say, hey, here's a new character. And then I got another road to go up. And so it really, and that's why it takes me longer to write a book than probably if I did actually have a structure, because I really sometimes don't know where these characters are going to go. It's kind of like a flow of consciousness thing. It takes a little longer to write it, but that's just been my process. Yeah, just fine. Just okay. All right, I'll watch you disappear. There you're going. I got all that crap on my bookshelf. Well, that doesn't look very nice. Well. Well,
Let's
you're back.
see. Yes. Can you hear me yet?
Okay, you're back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect.
You're on the other
Okay,
side of the
good.
screen now.
That's Riverside. The plus side to Riverside doing this is at least we don't lose the recording. The downside is it does this flip thing, but that's okay. We still have a solid recording when all is said and
Okay,
done.
cool.
And so we can pick up where we left off, which oh boy, I don't remember what the last question was, but
We were just
we
talking
were
about
talking about the writing
writing
process.
styles. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about your writing style, because you said that you don't have your whole idea mapped out. So, you said it's character driven. So, do
A
you
lot of it
map
is
out your
character.
whole character then, or how do you tell me about that?
Well, I mean, I have a basic idea of who my character is, and I have kind of an idea of what their arc is going to be, of what I want them to do and be from the beginning to the end. Like, are they going to be alive? They're going to be dead? They're going to be getting married? What those kind of things. But as far as the actual activity of everything that's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes it changes from where I thought it was going to go. And that's kind of like that's how writing is. All of a sudden you have those flashes of inspiration. I know you had those. So all of a sudden it's like the light bulb goes onto your head saying, wow, bam. And so you move in that direction. And like anything else, like I think, was it Hemingway said, first drafts are always crap, whatever you're going to write, whatever you're going to, oh, I'm done with that. Then you're going to start over again anyway.
Well,
So
that's
yeah.
true. Yeah. So I think fundamentally you and I are coming from the same place. I know where I'm going to. It's just the finite details, how they're going to get there, what's going to happen in between to get us from point A to point B. I think we are saying the same thing. We just are maybe expressing it differently. Um,
And my songwriting is a lot like that too, because I usually start a song with an idea or oftentimes a hook line,
mhm,
where I'll hear something, and like the story I tell on a song I wrote is I was in where was I was in South Dakota on a motorcycle ride, and I was sitting around a bonfire, and we were all drinking beer, and I was sitting next to this gal, and she said, you know, my husband recently passed away, and I told her I was sorry about that, and she mentioned something to the effect of, and you know, it's kind of funny that since he died, when I went to the doctor, he took me off my blood pressure medication. So I was thinking, well, that's kind of a weird thing to share, but you know. But then she said what became the hook line of the song. She goes, ever since he's been gone, I've been going to town. And so I thought, man, now that you're gone, I'm going to town. That's a
That
country
is.
line right there. And then,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
is.
and I ended up writing a song called "Now That You're Gone, I'm Going to Town." It has had nothing to do with that lady and how her husband had a heart attack and died, but it was all about a lady whose husband was not a very nice guy and ended up going to jail. And now that he's gone, she's going to town, and so
Yeah,
it turned out to be a pretty good country song. So
yeah,
that's how that just started with that one hook line, and then it went from there.
absolutely. That's just it. I mean, those conversations out of the blue, or just someone you meet that, or even just an unusual name. There's so many things that can inspire, whether it be a song or a story. I've got something like that. I've got a story I'm working on that I'm going to call Once Upon the Same Day. And it's because during one of my work days, I happened to pull up a client who, she and her husband were born 2 days apart in the same year. But then later the same day, I met another couple who were born on the same day, and the same year, I think it was. And it got me thinking about, what if you had this couple who met late in life, but they were born in the same town, maybe even the same hospital, but met years and years later after they'd
Yeah,
had a bit of a life.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
once upon the same day. So,
Yeah,
but
that's a
yeah,
cool little idea. Yeah,
yeah. But
yeah,
it's just things that strike and inspire us.
that's why when I was noveling, I spent a lot of time in coffee shops, rather than sitting at home because you're sitting at a coffee shop and you never know what you'll overhear or what you'll see with people walking in and out, and it's like you can get all kinds of ideas and stuff just by watching people watching.
So true. One thing is for sure, if you're by yourself at home, you're not going to be nearly as inspired being by yourself as you are if you're interacting with people, even on the street, just walking down the street. You're bound to see something, overhear something, talk to someone, and sometimes that's all you need just to inspire you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that works for noveling and story writing, not so much for songwriting because I usually have to have a guitar, and I need to be sitting here going through chords and melodies and things like that. So I usually can't do that at a coffee shop.
Yeah, not even for the idea, like that lady next to you. That since my husband's been gone, I've been going to town. I mean, I would think at least the inspiration for like the hook of a song or a phrase, you
Yeah,
wouldn't
you can get the
necessarily
hook,
need your
but then
guitar.
as far as to work it up and start, putting it down on paper and structuring it, then yeah, I got to be at home. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the same for me writing. I mean, I really wouldn't have the level of concentration to sit and write, at a coffee shop, for example. I'd be too distracted watching everyone. I wouldn't be writing. That, and writing on paper versus typing on my computer, my fingers will flow over the keyboard. If sitting and writing on an ink, I don't even know how I did it back when I was in school. I guess because I didn't have a choice back in those days, but
Yeah,
my
yeah, I
my
don't.
fingertips love to type.
Yeah, I've got a couple old typewriters, like Olivetti's and just some old ones from like the 40s, and then I've got a couple more recent ones, the old manual ones with the ribbons. I don't use them, but I have them because I do remember how we used to have to use those,
Yeah,
back in the
so
day, the
true.
IBM Selectrics, those things, and then
Yes,
everything went into word processing and life became much easier.
true, true. Yeah, not having to go find the what was it called, the whiteout or the liquid paper. But I'm thinking of that other stuff that was you put inside the typewriter thing, and you had to
Right.
type,
Yeah.
and it would
Yeah.
wipe
It
out
was the
the
tape. It was the white tape
yeah.
that would you type the same letter to
Yes.
get it to disappear. Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was challenging to get that right. To
Yeah.
get right back to the
Well,
exact same spot.
and you probably remember carbon paper then too, back
I
in the day.
do.
Yeah.
Barely, but I do. I'm
Yeah.
51, but
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember that.
I remember as a policeman, all our forms at one time were three copy carbon papers. You put it in the typewriter and type stuff, and you couldn't use those little tapes because the letter was on the other two copies that were bad. So you had to start over again. Yeah,
Yeah. My goodness. How many trees started to be saved once we went to the computers, I wonder.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is, if people didn't accidentally hit print and start printing out a book by mistake. Because we know that happened. Oh boy. But yeah, interesting times. Um, I still remember learning how to touch type with a manila folder sitting over my hands. That was a big deal back
Oh wow,
then. Learning how
I
to
don't
touch
remember that.
type. Yep.
Hmm.
Could not look at the
Interesting.
keyboard, had to have your hands covered and figure it out, but you figured it out.
Wow.
And I don't think kids today get to learn that.
I don't.
But
I'm thinking maybe typing is going to be a lost art because you'll just talk and it'll
well,
transcribe.
and
You
I would
know?
be okay with that.
Yeah.
Shades of Star Trek there. Still picture
Yeah.
Scotty picking up the mouse. Okay, computer.
Yeah.
Why is it not
Well,
why is it not typing?
and now there's programs out that will write songs for you and write music for you, and it's like I don't really know music industry is going to go in the next 10 years. Whether there'll be songwriters or it will just be people that are just talking into an AI and saying, I want a song about a country guy that drinks beer and drives a Ford and has been divorced twice and lives on a farm, you know, and then it writes a song
Yeah.
for him. I mean, it might end up going to that.
It could, but even at that, because I've played with this a little bit, I actually used it as a form of self therapy this summer, as a matter of fact. And even when you do that, you still have to adjust and tweak and fine tune it to get what you truly want. It's not going to just automatically come up with something brilliant. It can come up with something decent, but it's not
Yeah.
going to come up with exactly what you're looking for. And I do think there still has to be some talent involved. At the end of
I'm
the day, it's
hoping.
just like writing books, there still has to be that depth of experience, that voice. A computer can tell a decent story, but it's not going to tell the best story because it doesn't have your personal experience. It has a bunch of people's
Let's hope.
experiences.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah.
Unless it becomes self-aware. And then we're at Space Odyssey or whatever,
Yeah.
So,
Some movie out there about AI overlords or something.
yeah, well, I'm
Oh,
afraid it's coming, I don't know.
yeah.
It's sad, but it is what it
Yeah.
is. Like you said, there's no sense
Yeah.
worrying about it.
Well, exactly. I tend to think that it won't reach that point. We have a sense of self-preservation, and I do think, you know, if push comes to shove, computers will be gone before we're gone. But that's just
So you
my
haven't
thoughts
seen
on that.
Terminator yet.
I
Okay.
choose to ignore that one. That's
Interesting.
that's
Yeah. Well,
fiction. We all like to be scared a little bit, but that's only for entertainment purposes.
let's
But
hope. Let's hope. We
yeah,
just we're at the point now we don't know what we don't know. And
true.
so not to be conspiratorial in nature, but that is kind of my nature. I'm a little concerned about, things that are going on right now and we don't know what we don't know, but all we can do is get up every day and say thanks and move on, you know?
Yeah, yeah. live the best life we know how and make the smartest decisions possible,
And
and
be kind.
well, by all means. And that's something that
Be kind.
hopefully people will take to heart, because I think while there are a lot of kind people, people who are kind naturally, kindness could use a little work in general. I think there's a lot of people who could stand to brush up on that skill.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the golden rule would be great if everybody followed it, but it's hit and miss in today's world.
It is, and it's the time we're living in. But if everyone did, it'd be a much nicer place to live if everyone lived by
But
that one
that's the
rule.
good thing about music and songwriting is that, when you write a good song and it's a relatable song that people can understand and they enjoy, they come away feeling better. And so I kind of like, I think most of us songwriters and musicians out there, that's kind of what we think our job is. We get out there, let's give people something that they can relate to and laugh at and have a good time and go away from the end of the gig and say, wow, that was fun. You know, that's really, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's the cool thing too about writing books, writing music, and even like people who, act or write for television or things like that. All of these forms of entertainment, you are also shaping the way people think. You know, we do it for entertainment purposes, but there's a lot of power in that and a lot of responsibility. We are putting thoughts out there, and the more people listen to that music or read those books or take in that entertainment, it is shaping them, for better or for worse, and hopefully for the
Yep.
better.
Yeah, hopefully for the better. Like the last couple songs I've written have been kind of leaning into the more spiritual nature. One's about, a lady who lost her husband and she's getting ready to move with her daughters helping her pack up. And it's kind of like something that is really happening a lot nowadays. And so people are going
Mm-hmm.
to relate to that song. Then I got another one where, um, like it's all about how, none of us are perfect. The title is All Fall Down. We all fall down. And the
Good
subtitle
title.
is Ask, Seek, Knock, because it's kind of biblical thing going there. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I kind of going along those lines of late because I think more people are looking for that kind of stuff, rather than, I got a bunch of songs about trucks and beer and girls and things like that, but I'm leaning kind of like going towards this other, and trying to be a little bit more reflective and contemplative.
Sure.
More people are
Absolutely.
going that way, I think.
Absolutely. So as we've been talking this whole time, I've been, looking at your guitar there in the background, and I'm
Oh,
curious, is that the only instrument you play, or do you have other instruments that you also tinker with?
I got a bunch of them back there.
Well, yeah, you do. I see a banjo
The
among them,
guitars.
or a couple of banjos. Yeah.
Well, no, I play that, and then I play harmonica. I play harp. But I do not. I never did learn how to play piano. I wish I had, but I don't play piano. I'm a guitarist and a harp player. That's about it.
Well, I still think that's noteworthy. You know, I never had I don't know if I'd call it patience or the fortitude, or what descriptive to use for it, but to really learn to play acoustic guitar, I just could not take the frets on my hands. It would just hurt to do that, and I
Yeah.
didn't have the discipline to follow through and really learn it. Though I did enjoy my lessons, which I got for free with some friends, but I just didn't have it. My baby brother, on the other hand, came while I was having these lessons, picked up my guitar, tinkered around for a little bit, started playing it like he'd been playing it the day he was born. It was just like, okay, you are gifted. You are a natural born guitar player. How did that skip over me who actually wanted to learn? But
Yeah.
I love that he had that
Well,
ability.
he's probably not a novelist. You know.
True. Probably not.
There you go.
trade-offs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really impressed with his ability to pick up and play, and he played for a lot of years. I believe he still plays. We're not as
Oh,
much in
cool.
touch now as we had been, but neither here nor there. We're getting down to toward the end of our program, so I do have a question from a previous guest, the random question that we asked. So the last guest who was here, let's see how. Actually, this kind of ties in with what we were talking about being anxious and the worry. He made a reference to Marcus Aurelius about not being overly concerned about things you control versus things you could not control. So the bottom line for his question was, how do you control worry?
Oh, how do you control worry? Well, I think it's best if you just ignore it and think of something else. You can't keep two thoughts in your head at one time. So if you're worried about, oh, I'm worried about I might lose this job, well, then think about something else. Going to the beach, and then the job worry's gone. So it's a strategy,
Okay. All
and I
right.
think like
So
you said it earlier, what's the sense in worrying about it? Is that going to change anything? So
yeah, if you
it's
don't
you
have
know
the
it's a
power
futile
to.
it's a futile attempt to make yourself miserable. I mean, if you want to make yourself miserable, you can sit around and worry all day. But think about something else.
True.
Do
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's very
Yeah.
hard to worry about. Like we live on a small farm. We raise some cattle. We got dogs and cats and cows. And so if I start to think about if I start to get down and I'm thinking about bumming about something, I can go outside to the barn and there's a bazillion things to do, that will say, well, I can do this and then I don't have to worry about that. So many strategies.
True. And I think really that kind of hits on it, just being busy with something that you have the power to control, you know, because if you don't have the power to control, then you're just spinning your wheels going nowhere fast. You might as well just be, it's like spinning your wheels in mud. You're not doing anyone any good. You're just wasting the gasoline in your car because until that mud dries or you get some help,
Yeah.
it's just a waste. So, do you have any thoughts about a question for the next guest?
All right. Let me think of something. All right. Here's one. Okay. So we'll put our next guest in a hypothetical situation.
Okay.
Okay. You've just gotten off the highway at your exit and you're going down the road. There's a car on the side of the road with the hood up, and a lady is standing next to it, looking down into her engine compartment. Do you pull over and stop, or do you just keep going? And depending on your answer, why?
Okay. Good question. All right. So, as we get back on track with the wrap up, I want people, Spotify, of course, they're watching the video. They should be able to see your website. For those who are hearing the audible version, which will be on YouTube and other channels, I want them to recognize that you do have a website, and it is howardlevinson.net. So they can take note of that. On their website,
Right.
I would assume that they'll find places that you're playing music. Will they find your songs, albums, and
Yeah,
books
I've
listed
got
there?
different tabs. Yeah, different tabs on the website where you can find where I'm playing. I updated like where I've been the last month and then the month or two ahead, and then I've got a couple pictures, some pictures and some video and 3 or 4 songs that you can listen to, and then of course all the links to Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I got a Howard Levinson music page and a Howard J. Levinson Facebook page. So all that stuff and everything that everybody's got. I'm the last of the social media gurus. I just the record company folks always say you need to be making more YouTube videos. You need to be posting more. It's like I'm busy with doing cows and stuff, and so sometimes it's just not part of me to get out there and make a video. But I know I should. But I'm out there on social media, and posting where I'm playing next and that kind of stuff. So they can find me.
Absolutely. I know
Of
how
course,
you
my
feel,
books are
though.
on
There's only so
Amazon.
many hours. I was going to
All
ask
my
about
books are
that
on
next.
Amazon. Yeah, they're on
Okay.
Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. And so, if you wanted to leave one last thought for our audience or one last takeaway, advice, anything at all, what would you like to say to our audience as we wrap this things up?
Well, a little self-serving for you and I, but I would say really support your local indie music people, musicians that play your local places, support them if they're selling shirts or CDs, or just go on their websites, check them out, listen to their songs. If you're not so much into that, but you're into books, support your local indie bookstores, those small little bookstores that every city and every town has. That's not the big bookstores, the Barnes and Noble, those small ones that are locally owned. Support those too.
Nicely said and greatly appreciated. Well, Howard, thank you so much for making the time to join us this evening. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was really a lot of fun, Zoe. Thanks.
I think that hit it just perfect. All right, so
Okay,
I'll
great.
get you a copy of our episode, and then we'll and it'll include the clips. And like I said, just use it as you see fit. It will be mid
Okay.
December when the episode goes on Spotify and related channels. All right,
Oh, great. That was fun. Yeah, that was a good
I,
interview. We covered
good.
a
I'm
lot of
glad you
territory.
enjoyed it. We did, and
Okay.
the good thing is that it flowed. We didn't have to stumble around too much to try to figure out what to talk about. So for me, that's always a good sign.
No, and we could have kept on going.
I think we probably could have. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I hope you have a great evening.
Okay.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye bye.